there. Welcome to Tiff Reads Books. I'm Tiff and I read books and I talk to you about them. And the other day I asked you guys if you would rather have me do more like full spoiler reviews. Those seem to be the most popular things that I do. They're the things I actually enjoy the most. And I was just kind of worried that people were like not wanting things spoiled, but that seems to be the things that people want from me, especially the I read so you don't have to type, where I just like detail everything. And the ones that I've done that I enjoy the most is just telling you as I'm reading the book and just cutting in and being like, here's what's happened so far, here's my thoughts on it. And then of course, if the book starts to annoy me, I start jumping in with even more and more like regular things, being like, oh my god, this is what's happening. Let me tell you about it because I am annoyed. So I thought I would just bring back that energy. And I happened to be at the library today and they have this lucky day shelf where they set back a few books of popular titles that nobody can put a hold on. And whenever they turn up at that library, they go on the shelf. So when I got there today, there were like 6 copies of A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I am debating doing that one. For a couple of reasons. This is not today's video, but if you want me to do A Court of Thorns and Roses, which I am 90% sure will not be the book for me, based on everything that I've read about it. My best friend read it recently and she's like, please read it. But I'm like, everything you told me about it that you liked are things that I don't like. So I don't want to read it just to hate it unless other people will find that enjoyable. Because I do know that it's a very well-loved book by a lot of people. It's also very strongly hated on many corners of the internet, and I'm sure a lot of people are just like, A Court of Thorns and Roses out. So, if you want me to do it, please let me know in the comment. But for this video, we're gonna do this one. They had this one for Lucky Day, and I have heard some really mixed reviews, okay? So, this has a 4-star review on Storygraph on average, but when I was scrolling through the reviews, there were so many 2 stars. The top, like, most recent, because Storygraph, you can like people's reviews, but they don't show how many likes, and it doesn't sort by anything like that. So it just sorts by most recent, and you can't search for low reviews and high reviews, because it's not like a social media app, it's just like a book app, which I kind of like Storygraph for. So one of the most recent comments was yikes, and in parentheses derogatory, which I find to be one of like the funniest ways to like rag on something, is to use a word and then put in parentheses derogatory. And I've just seen it recently because I'm old and I'm not on like TikTok, so I find that really funny. So that got me scrolling, and I saw a lot of like reviews where people were like, this is victim blaming, this is glorifying grooming. And then I saw a bunch of other reviews where people were like, 5 stars, this is the best book I've ever read, this is my favorite thriller of all time. And I had seen actually a lot of like mid reviews. This is a solid 3-star according to a lot of other reviews that I've seen, like when it first came out. So this has been out for a little while now. I'm wanting to say it came out last year, but maybe it was early this year, because it was last year. I think it was late last year that this came out. So I don't normally read thrillers very often. Anyway, this is a long intro. Let's read this book together. It is None of This Is True by Jewell. And I have heard it's really good on audio, but we're not going to do audio for this. This book is 366 pages. This will probably, thrillers tend to read really fast for me. This is big font, wide margins. I've just come off of a very long epic fantasy that was kind of blew my mind a little bit. And I need something that's not that and is either going to just like piss me off because it's awful, or I'm just gonna fly through. So, are you ready? Alright, I'm here in my granny cardigan with my AC blowing to give you a little update. So I'm like almost 30 pages in, and we've basically done some character introductions. We're following 2 women who were born on the same day in the same hospital, and they happen to be celebrating their birthday in the same gastropub at the same time. And Josie is one of them, and she is married to an older man. We don't know how much older than her, but we do know that she met him when she was 13 and had her first baby by 19. and then her second one by 22. So her whole life has been mom. So now that she's 45, that would mean her oldest kid is 26. Did I math correctly? Yes, I did. And her youngest would then be 23. So her kids are grown. She's in her 40s. She just has kind of a chill, normal life at this point now. Her birthday twin, Alex Summers, is a podcaster who has a very large group of friends and was out celebrating her birthday with all of them. So Josie was kind of, you know, a little bit jealous of the situation, but not in like a weird way, just kind of like, what would it be like kind of way, right? But she goes home and she kind of starts stalking Alex on social media. She finds out she does a podcast and she listens to like every single episode of Alex's podcast, follows her on like her socials, and starts kind of stalking her. Alex goes home with her husband, and her husband goes out on a fucking bender after they start drinking, and he fucking disappears. So we get both of them now contemplating their lives, because Josie is like, my life would have been very different without my husband. What would it be like if he happened to die? What would happen to my life? And Alex is now like, is my marriage worth it? Because my husband is apparently a walking list of pros and cons, is what she says here. And I'm sitting here like, girl, give me the list. I want to know the list of pros and cons. Besides the bender thing, obviously that is a big con. Like, but I have yet to see a pro of your husband here so far, because so far he's like said a couple of like things where she's like judged his judginess of women's beauty, and he has not really been like around because he went on this bender and disappeared for a night and slept in a hotel, and now he's like snapping at the kids, and every time like he does something, she's like, I don't even know if I like him anymore. Like, where's the pros? Give me your list. I want to know. I want to be nosy. Give me your list. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. Clearly we're setting up Josie to not be a very great person, based on the stalking and her kind of awkwardness, but also clearly she's a victim of grooming and she has no friends at all. So her husband's been a bit isolating, maybe, potentially. Having kids very young can do that to people, unintentionally. So what is it? But clearly we're setting her up to be the bad guy. So I'm kind of wanting to know what happened. This is the thing about thrillers, is they keep me reading. So I'm gonna keep reading. I should have turned the page, because as I turn the page, it says, the pros have always been quite slight. Being a good dancer, for example. Great on a second date, but not so important 15 years down the road with 2 children, 2 careers, and a future to worry about. So, that's like the one pro so far. But I'm assuming we're gonna get a couple more as we go. So I should have just turned to the page. But that's not that great of a pro. If she met him when she was 30, as I was 30 fairly recently, 7 years ago, I don't think at 30 I would have put pro, can dance. Like, maybe at 25. And even then, I've always been a bit cynical, so maybe I wouldn't have. But I have, like, friends who were 30-year-old women, and I don't think any of us would have been like, oh yeah, he's a good dancer. But maybe we're all cynical. Okay, so I'm still in the beginning. Josie's life is really weird. Her oldest daughter, Roxy, left home when she was 16, and Josie Googles her once a week to see if she can find her. Don't know if she's missing or she's like gone no contact. The youngest daughter is 21 and apparently spends all of her time in her bedroom playing video games, only eats baby food, and Josie like never sees her, and she said she can't go into the room because of the stench of it, and I'm like, what is going on here? And then apparently every night Walter just like leaves the bed and disappears once he thinks Josie's asleep. So no idea what that is either. I don't know, man. Weird shit. I got it wrong. Erin is the older daughter. Roxy's the younger daughter. So Roxy is 21, so she would have left home 5 years ago. And apparently the neighbors used to hear like screaming all the time coming from their house and like door slamming and shit. So 50 pages in. They've just started the idea of the podcast that Alex is going to follow Josie while she changes her life, and we're going to learn Josie's backstory and what she means by she's changing her life, because I don't know, man. There has been no hints of what she's going to do, unless it's murder. It's probably murder, because there's been like 2 people in Alex's life died after she met Josie, so it's probably murder that she's going to be doing, which would be really interesting and horrifying to like follow a murderer on a podcast, like not knowing that's what you were getting into. Horrifying idea. But we got another pro tick of Nathan, Alex's husband. He's like a real estate guy, so he makes bank, and he like built her a little studio shed when her podcast was going good, and so it's like the narrator is like, is it any wonder that Alex is so torn about her marriage when her husband is capable of such acts of generosity and affection, whilst also capable of making her want to die? But basically Alex is like, my life is pretty fucking sweet. I can go buy designer bags, I can stop and get any fancy food I want, and my husband's like, yeah, honey, you do you. So, I mean, that's kind of why she's like, tick, tick, tick in the pro column, and not just dealing with the benders in the con column. I am a little shook. I am shooketh. We just got the reveal of how old Josie's husband is. Y'all, this man was 42 when she was 15. When they got together, she met him, she says in the very beginning, that she was 13, which means he was 40. That's a 27-year age difference, and she was a baby. Like not a baby, but like, she's a fucking teenager. My God. I can see the yikes derogatory coming through. I don't know how we're gonna push through with like Alex being able to continue this, because if I was like Alex and I was recording this, I would have to stop. There's no, I would be like, be so for real right now. Please be so for real, because ma'am, I'm cutting in a lot, and I'm only 55 pages in, but okay. This wording I really, really like, and I just need to I need to share it. So, Josie says, after when she first met Walter, and he sat down, not when she first met, but when she first realized that he was interested in her, yikes, he sat next to her, and she says, it was just there like an invisible monster in the room. And Alex says, a monster? And she says, yes, that's what it felt like. His interest in me, it felt like a monster. So Alex says, so you were scared of him? And she said, not of him, no. He was nice. I was scared of his wanting me. I couldn't believe that nobody else could see it. Only me. It was so big and so real. But my mother didn't see it. Helen didn't see it. But I saw it, and I was scared of it. And it's an interesting perspective to put out, that when you feel that danger of somebody's interest and nobody else notices it, and you're like, I am in a shitty situation, somebody please notice and help me. It just a very good analogy that kind of gave me a little bit of a pause, and I was like, okay. So far the writing in this, I will say, the writing in this is actually really good. And it's nice to read something where the characters feel real. So it's nice to have something that I'm reading physically with my eyeballs that is well written, at least. Even if the story itself is going to end up yikes, the writing is good. The writing is fine. I'm not the characters are developed. They're multifaceted. They're not paper cutouts of fucking tropes. I'm gonna start going on a rant. I need to stop. I really need to read on to at least the next chapter break before I start talking to you about things, because we just got to a part where they're interviewing Josie's friend Helen, who I mentioned when I gave you the quote, and she makes a comment about how it was obvious that Walter groomed Josie, but that it was a two-way street. because she wanted him and she made him want her. She was 14. She was 14. She was 14. Alex is my hero. So her husband went on another bender, a midweek one, and this time she's like, a midweek one? Are you fucking kidding me? And he like messages her at 6 o'clock in the morning, because he doesn't come home when he does these. Messages her at like 6 o'clock in the morning. He's like, on my way home, please don't hate me. I love you. I'm sorry. I'm a dick. And she like gets mad about it. Like I would too. I would be like, oh my fucking God, stop being a whiny little baby, which is basically how she feels about it. She's like, he sounds like a child. Like, get the fuck over it. So she's like, I have 30 more minutes to sleep. I'm going back to sleep. And then he messaged her like 3 more times. So she picks up the phone and she calls him. And she's like, I didn't get to sleep till 2 a.m., Nathan. 2 a.m. Waiting to hear from you. Wondering where the fuck you were. And then you messaged me at 6 a.m. to wake me up. And you know my alarm goes off at 6:30. You couldn't even wait a half an hour because you're too fucking selfish. So yes, thanks a lot, Nathan. I've had 4 hours of sleep. And now I have to get the kids up and get them ready for school. And then do a full day's work. And I don't even know where you've been. Or you don't even know where you've been. And he's like, starts to cut in to apologize. And she's like, fuck off, Nathan. And hangs up on him. And I'm like, yes, do it. Yes. The fucking power of just letting your rage go. Because she's like, oh, I'm going to wait till I'm not angry. I'm going to wait till I'm not angry. And I'm like, no, give it to him. Give it to him. He's a grown-ass man. He's a grown-ass man. I am uncomfortable. I'm very uncomfortable. Josie decided to just like go to Alex's house when she wasn't there and like snoop around, and the Ring app caught her. And I haven't gotten to like the conversation because I am uncomfortable. Like I get uncomfortable at these types of things, and I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you do that? But in the meantime, Alex has been like asking random people questions because like her kids go to the same school that Josie's kids went to. So she's like asked like one of the admin ladies, like, did you know these kids? And the admin lady's like, yeah, the family was kind of weird. I was always worried about those 2 girls. And then she like remembers that the neighbor's kid went to the same school, and she happens to like run into him because he like needs his house keys and she's got a copy. So she's like, oh hey, wait a minute, you're like the same age as those girls, do you remember them? And he's like, yeah, they were fucking weird. And yeah, so I'm like, okay, this is the type of like piecing things out bit by bit that I enjoy. I don't like it when authors try to do it with characters that are like, I had a bad experience, I don't talk about it, but I'm gonna like constantly bring it up all the time until eventually I just tell you, and I'm like, stop bringing it up. This is how you do it. You don't do it with like, oh, but we don't talk about that. Oh, but we don't talk about that. Oh, it reminds me so much of that experience that we don't talk about. Stop it. Stop it. Okay, so I do like this line. Alex has just told Josie about Nathan's issues, and basically Josie's like, so what are you gonna do about it? And Alex is like, I don't fucking know, man. And Josie's just like, men. And then like both of them just like, men. And she's like, and there it is, the point at which it all boils down to eventually. The point where there are no words, no theories, no explanations for behaviors that baffle and infuriate and hurt. Just that. Men. Josie is starting to get like weirdly controlling of Alex. And I have this like mixed feeling about it, right? Because in one hand, I'm like, okay, we knew she was going to be the villain from the beginning. But on the other hand, I'm trying to figure out what it's trying to do with her, right? Because she has had such a horrible life. And are we like trying to say that she has a horrible life because she's not a good person? Or are we trying to say that her horrible life has made her not a good person? And I'm struggling with it because of her being a victim. So I'm really struggling with like that aspect of it. But she's starting to be like really controlling of Alex, and it's really kind of weird. And it is making me uncomfortable. Like, I'm unsettled. Good morning. I have woken up unwell the last 2 days. But I read 100 pages of this last night.
And this is just to check in and be like, I'm uncomfortable with things that are happening. We've got some really weird reveals that Walter was apparently also abusing one of Josie's youngest daughter's friends, and that's what spurred her daughter to run away. And then we also get the reveal that, as it's kind of implied, that Walter has been abusing Josie's older daughter for the last 5 years, and Josie has just been like letting it happen. Now, here's the thing. Right before that, we got this whole thing from Walter about how Josie lies and she makes up lies, and we had then them getting in a verbal altercation with Josie starting to scream at Walter, and then us cutting to like hours later. We have no idea what happened, but Josie has like wormed her way into Alex's house and is staying there, and it feels a little like single white female, where she's like trying to get herself into Alex's life. She's wearing Alex's clothes, she's using Alex's makeup, she doesn't want to leave, and Alex is starting to get worried. She's like, I got myself so deep in this, but I don't want to stop the show. And I'm like, I would have preferred if we'd given Alex a different reason, because like getting that deep in and then being like, I have to do it for the show, is like not as like it. I guess it makes Alex not as sympathetic of a character, because if it was like her literally not having any support, not knowing how she was going to get herself out of this, feeling in danger from Josie, and feeling concerned about actually asking her to leave, like it was going to put her or her children in danger if she asked her, that would, I think, it'd be a little more compelling and sympathetic. But maybe the point is that we're not supposed to like either of these women. So I don't know how I feel about it. I am definitely seeing the yikes, because it feels very exploitative of victims, considering Josie herself is a victim. But we're almost supposed to be like, yeah, but she's a really bad person, so maybe she deserved it. Or did it really happen that way? Did she actually seduce him when like she was a literal child? But we're going off about how controlling Josie is, and how like she sets up situations, makes people believe what she wants to believe. But the fact that we're setting her up like that, and then we have her with Walter as like when she was an actual child, I'm like, that is a concern that I have with this. If we had aged her up to like 22-ish, I would be a little less ick. If it was like, oh yeah, at 22, you know, she'd already like been manipulating the boys at her school that were her same age, and then like she graduated to this grown-ass married man, right? Then I could be like, okay, she's a villain. But at 14, was she really a villain at 14? Is that what we're going with? So that's my concerns. I have to go to work. And I'm feeling a little better now, but I also took some Dayquil, so who knows? But I have to go to work. I'm gonna try to put in part of my day. Maybe I'll get there and just put in sick hours and come home. Who knows? Talking is very hard right now, so I'm gonna go. Okay, so a really cool thing happened today, and that is that, well, I guess it's not really cool, but for me, I'm very happy, because it means I got to go home from work today early. So I went into the office and all the lights were off. Nobody was there. And I got an email like 20 minutes later that was like, yeah, we're closed today. So that was great for me. So there's like a technology issue or something. So I am home on the couch. I have walked the dog, I have had my lunch, and I am reading this. So I am now starting part 3, so I thought I would catch you up. So Josie has been staying with Alex after her and her husband got in a fight, and she showed up bloody on Alex's doorstep, claiming that her husband beat her, and Erin, her older daughter, had gone somewhere else with a friend that she knows from online, and Josie needed a place to stay, so Alex let her stay with them. And she was supposed to stay like a night, and then she was like, oh, maybe I can stay like for the weekend, like to the weekend. And Alex kind of like agreed to, in order to keep the podcast going, but was like really uncomfortable with it. And then she had to like figure out a way to get Alex to leave her house, or Josie to leave Alex's house. because she didn't want her there any longer. Like, she was weird, it was uncomfortable. She's been taking jabs at Alex's husband constantly, and has like some sort of plan to get back at him, so that she can get herself back into Alex's house now. So in between that though, they had like their like last session, and Alex started asking her about what happened like on that Friday night, and Josie was like giving her information and it wasn't adding up. Like, she said, oh well, we got home from your house and then I like blew up at him, and she gave this long speech, like word for word of what she said, and I was like, yeah, sure you did, sure you said that. And I mean, we know what she said because we read the part in the book. It was like kind of similar-ish, I guess, because in the, like, what we saw was Josie being like, I can't do this anymore, Walter, I can't do this anymore. And then it faded to black. And so we get this whole speech instead about him like being a groomer and a P word and like all that stuff, right? And then she says she immediately came to Alex's house, and Alex in her head, she's like, she showed up here at like 3 a.m. They left my house at like no later than 10 o'clock. So what happened in between? And she asks Josie that. She's like, what, did you go anywhere else before you came here? And Josie's like, no, I came straight here. And Alex is like, girl, there's like 5 hours. And she's like, oh, of course, you know, it wasn't as soon as we got home. I confronted Walter when he got up in the middle of the night because I knew he was going into Aaron's room, and that's when I confronted him. And Alex is like, did you sleep in your clothes? And she's like, no, of course not. I changed into the dress that I was wearing the night, like when we were over here after he beat me up. And she's like, but Josie, the whole front of your dress was bloody. So how did your dress get bloody? And then she's like, throws a fit and storms away. And so I'm like, Alex is catching on. There's something not right. So I'm waiting to see what Alex does with that. And part 3 is Josie walking to her mom's house. Supposedly. And she's like stolen a bunch of shit from Alex's house. So who knows if she's stolen a key or anything. Like, so many bad decisions from the women in this book. So many. Okay, so there was this prologue that was like, it's like all he's and she's, there's no like names or anything, and it's like, dude was really drunk, he was with this girl, some woman came to pick him up, and he's like, what are you doing here? And she's like, oh, she sent me to come get you. And he like gets in her car and they drive away. That's like the prologue, basically. So we've just had what that was, and it was Josie's plan. She hired a struggling actress to hit on him and seduce him, essentially. And the lighting in here is really weird, and it's making like one eyebrow look darker than the other, and it's driving me crazy. Yeah, so she hired this actress. The actress got him to go to a specific bar or something, and then she called Josie, and then that was like a fade to black. And now we have like Alex's perspective with her like waking up, her going to bed with him not home. He was supposed to be home at midnight, and she found these evidence that Josie found she went through Nathan's pockets when Alex wasn't home, and she found like an old key card for a hotel, an old like key card sleeve for a hotel, a baggie that probably had some residue in it, and a napkin with like a phone number scrawled on it. And so she added a name to the napkin and shoved it all in Alex's shoe closet. And so Alex found that, and now she's like, well, fuck, he's out with someone. Why did I never think he could do this, type of thing, right? So that's midnight, and then it flashes forward to like 3:30. She's still not able to sleep. She gets like a little bit of sleep. She wakes up at 5. She goes back to bed for like an hour, and now she's like trying to call him, and she can't find him. And so she checks the bank account, and he has made no purchases. Like no Uber, no hotel, none of the things he normally does when he's out that late. So now she's worried. And I'm worried for him too. Okay, so here we are. Josie has essentially kidnapped Nathan, and Alex has just figured it out. And so we have her calling the police. Now here's the thing. This started out as like this kind of traumatized woman who had been groomed as a child, and found herself in a situation that was no longer working for her. And now we have turned her into this deranged, stalker, obsessed woman. And I feel uncomfortable about it because I'm of two minds of this. The first is that I really like the way these characters are written. I feel like they have a lot of depth. I feel like they're acting as like normal humans would. I think Lisa Jewell is doing a great job building suspense and tension and keeping me interested in the story. I'm flying through this. I'm like 280 pages into it. So there's only like 80 pages left. And I'm enjoying the multimedia aspect. We're having like bits and pieces strung in of like, here's like a Netflix episode, 'cause it's like made into a Netflix show or whatever. So here's like this script, and here's a scene description, here's what people are saying, and then we have like podcast recordings. So we have like the recording of what they talked about, and I like this format. I like the way it's done. It's fast-paced. It's keeping me interested. But I'm really struggling with why we made our villain this way. Like, when there's lots of other options for a villain, and it's kind of nice to have a domestic thriller where it's not the husband did it, right? But I'm struggling, you know? So I'm gonna keep reading. I'll check in if something big happens, and then we'll chat at the end. So we're getting into this thing, right, where I feel like this would have worked really well if we had aged Josie up a bit. Just a bit. Because there's this whole conversation happening about, like, how Josie accused Walter of abusing their oldest daughter. He wasn't abusing her. He was getting up every night to go play games with her while she streamed. He would, like, sit behind her and make jokes, and that's part of... She was streaming games and making money that way. And he had a really good bond with his daughters. So I'm struggling. I don't like this because we're, like, humanizing this man who groomed this 13, 14, 15-year-old girl, and we're going to make it as if she seduced him and she is the villain in his life. That I'm not going to like. And that's where I'm like, if we'd made her a little older, just a little bit, like at least like 21, 22, still not fully frontal lobe developed, but still like a legal adult, like a legal can buy alcohol in the United States adult. This is set in the UK, but at least 21. Like, then it's like a 20-year age difference. It's still a really toxic age difference, but she's at least an adult. And yeah, so I'm struggling. I like this story. I think the story is really intriguing. I don't read a lot of thrillers, so maybe this is very overdone, but I think the story is a little intriguing. I think the fact that he would go and sit with her while she streamed and makes jokes and stuff is actually kind of heartwarming. And I don't like that we're doing that to a man who groomed a teenager. So Roxy has shown up. That's the younger daughter, and she's correcting everything. She's like giving Alex an entirely different story of what happened with Brooke, the other girl that Josie accused Walter of grooming. That was Brooke and God, there's so many names. Brooke and Roxy were friends, but actually they were dating. And actually the fight they got in at school wasn't about Walter. It was about somebody telling Roxy that Brooke used a slur against Erin, Roxy's sister. And Roxy said that she did what she always does, and she acts without looking into it first. And then she decided to run away, that she couldn't do it anymore. And now we just had Pat, which is Josie's mom, call Alex and be like, I need to tell you my side of the story, what really happened. And like with Walter and Josie, and I'm like invested, but I don't like it still. Like, I still don't like that we're doing this with, like, it's so odd. But the dog needs to go for a stroll. So I'm gonna take a break. I've got like 50 pages left. So now's a good time to take a break, because once I start reading this, I'm going to finish it. So that's my plan for today. Okay, so I think I've got to the yikes derogatory part, right? So apparently Walter was actually Josie's mom's boyfriend, in addition to him being a married man. And Josie at like 16 decided that she wanted him. And so we don't know if they slept together before she turned 18, because then it says like at 18 they went to Pat and told her that they were getting married and leaving. So we don't know if it started before she was 18, like Josie said, at least at this point. But Alex is like, so she says, so in your opinion, Walter didn't groom Josie? And Pat says, groom her? You mean manipulate her into a relationship with him? No, I don't think so. I think she saw him, she wanted him, she got him. She didn't care who she hurt. She's never cared who she hurt. And this is a terrible thing to say about your own child, and obviously I've been far from perfect myself, but I really think Josie has a heart of stone, a pure heart of stone, or a heart of pure stone. She was a child. Regardless of what she did or acted or how she acted in this situation, she was a child and he was a 40-year-old man. He was grown. She was not. This is the issue here with this presentation of things, where I said, if we had just aged her up a few years, I don't think this would be as big of a yikes. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's still a good book and I'm uncomfortable reading it, and it's probably going to drop it down to like a 3 for me because of that, from what would probably be like a 4, because that's just, why? So they've found Nathan's body, and Josie sent Alex, Jesus, I'm struggling with the names today. Josie sent Alex a voice message about how I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it to go this way, and the worst part of it all is that I couldn't tell you my deepest, darkest secret, and it was gonna be darker than anything. And I'm just like, I still don't know, man. I still am like, why are we doing this way? But Aaron is waking up, and before I get emotional over the sisters reunion, because I don't have like a close relationship with my sisters, and so it's always one of those things, it's like men showing emotions, where I always get like overly emotional about it because the men in my life don't show their emotions, and then like, so I get overly emotional, and then when like sisters are nice to each other, I get overly emotional. So anyway, okay, so we are near the end. I think I have like 10 pages left. And basically what happened is, so Erin woke up from her coma and she told us everything, that she filled in a lot of the gaps. So she had been like streaming in order to like hide from her life, and her dad found out she was doing it, and he started doing it with her because he thought it was fun, and it made her more popular because it was different. And he was like, bitch, you can make money off this. And he set up her bank accounts and taught her how to monetize everything and set everything up for her. And her dad were going to leave her mom in like that summer, basically. So the hypothesis is that like Josie found out and knew about it, and she needed to get ahead of it to get out. Basically, we're making her into this kind of like narcissistic person who needed everything in her life about her. And that's why she like stole her mom's boyfriend, and all that stuff. And then the night after the dinner, she attacked Walter, and Walter she attacked Walter, and then Erin came out of the room and attacked her mom, and then her mom like knocked her over super easily because Erin is very thin and frail, apparently. And she essentially left Erin for dead, tied to a chair, which it turns out is a punishment that they devised for Roxy when she was acting out, or that they, either Walter and Josie, or just Josie maybe, devised this chair with like straps on it to put Roxy into when she would like act it up. Which is horrendous. So, yeah. And then Alex, like, made the podcast. Podcast went viral and then got bought up by Netflix to be produced as a documentary. And when Josie hears the last line of the podcast, which was clearly used as a way to, like, lure her in, because Alex called her a basic bitch, and I'm like, that's so weird, but okay. It caused Josie to, like, write Alex a letter, like a very threatening letter. So that's where we're at. I am at 16 months later, and this is, like, the last, like, 10-ish pages. So I'm gonna read those, and then we'll see what I feel. See what I feel. So I finished it, and I don't know how I feel. I think it's like a 3-star, like I was saying, because I am kind of bothered by the fact that, like, Josie was a victim, but we're like, no, she manipulated the whole situation. But then in the very last, like, little bit, we undo a bunch of stuff by being like, Josie remembered it differently, didn't she? Wasn't that really the way she remembered it? So she doesn't remember that she killed Brooke. She remembers coming home and finding that Roxy had killed her. And Roxy was like, if you ever say anything, I'll say it was you. And I genuinely don't know if we're supposed to believe that, because there was, like, a little scene where when Aaron woke up, Roxy was like, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. And it's like, okay, so is that Roxy telling Aaron, like, here's the words you're going to tell everyone? Or is that actually, like, her just being like, here's what we know about what happened? So I can't say I like that. And I think if we just left that last chapter out, I would have preferred the book. Like, it makes the whole thing feel pointless. It makes the whole thing feel absolutely pointless. Maybe the point is that you never really know what other people are, who they are. But I'm just like, man, did we have to say, if we didn't make her so young when she met Walter, it would have been an entirely different book. Like, it would have not had the ick factor to it, because there is a whole ick thing of us being like, oh, but Josie was terrible. Josie was terrible. She was such a manipulative little teenager. And I'm like, oh my god, can we stop with the, like, demonization of teenage girls? Can we please stop with the demonization of teenage girls? Because that's what this feels like, is the same views that people I know have about teenage girls. And it's just unfair. So, I'm sitting at this being like a 3, maybe a 2.5. I think it's a 3, because it was fine. But no, you know what? I'm gonna put it at like a 2.5, because that ending pissed me off. That ending pissed me off. So we're gonna call it a 2.5, because of the victim blaming, the demonization of teenage girls, and that fucking ending. If we didn't have that last chapter, it probably would have been a 3. So, this book is wildly popular. I don't know how many reviews it has, but maybe I'll put it right here. So should you read this? I don't know. But if you don't want to, I hope you enjoyed this. So, I will see you soon with something else.